Donald Trump loses 3 times to the 3 law firms in federal court that actually stood up to his executive orders targeting those law firms. Other law firms bent the knee. They're now disgraced and humiliated in the legal community. But Trump was handed loss after loss after loss in 3 separate courts, including 2 federal courts where they were George W. Bush appointees. We'll discuss also an order against the Trump regime from using signal and other text communication methods for sending classified communications in violation of the Presidential Records Act was handed down by none other than Judge Boasberg, who randomly got assigned the Signal Gate case brought by a group called American Oversight. Judge Boasberg is also handling the case by the ACLU regarding Donald Trump's regime's kidnapping of migrants and sending them to concentration camps in El Salvador. Speaking of that case, Judge Boasberg extended the injunction against the Trump regime from these kidnap renditions to concentration camps in El Salvador. That was extended to about mid-April. We'll discuss, and we're learning a lot of stories about migrants who are not Tren de Aragua gang members who were here lawfully, lawful asylum seekers, good people, family people who were now living in, or maybe even not anymore, concentration camps in El Salvador. A real horrific time in our nation's history. Also, we have to talk about a bad ruling. Not all good rulings. It's not all gravy here when it comes to what the courts are doing. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals issued a bad ruling regarding Donald Trump's terminations of the National Labor Relations Board member and the Merit Protections Board member. It was, to me, a really bad ruling saying that the status quo being preserved is the termination by Trump, not the fact that the people hold on to their jobs. So it's a kind of temporary order, but it will prevent these people from getting their jobs back during the duration of their litigation. And I think it's a bad ruling. It'll likely get appealed to the Supreme Court, but not a good sign that that's what the Court of Appeals did. But a good ruling, if you will, by the Supreme Court against the Trump regime on the issue of ghost guns and against the NRA on the issue of ghost guns. It was a 7-2 ruling. We'll discuss that ruling, its implications as well, but 7-2 against ghost guns. It should be unanimous, but that's where we're at. Let's bring in Michael Popok from the Legal AF podcast. Michael Popok, before throwing it to you, I just want to share this video of Kristi Noem at the concentration camp in El Salvador wearing a $60,000 Rolex. Kristi Noem is the Secretary of Homeland Security, a dog killer as well, a human killer as well. Here she is. Let's play this clip.
Here at CCOT today and visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
I wanted to lead with that, Michael Popok, and share that at the outset. We're going to talk more about it in this episode. It's not getting the attention it deserves from other corporate news media. That's why being independent news media, it's important that we highlight that. We have prisons in the United States. We have a deportation process. Nobody wants criminals and gang members here, but we do have a system of due process to determine who are the bad guys and who are not. And bragging about concentration camps in El Salvador, a country that has a $30 billion a year GDP and a 25 to 30% poverty rate. It's not exactly the model of who we should be in the United States. But let me throw it to you, Pope.
Yeah, no, look, the Kristi Noem is obscenely unqualified to be protecting the homeland in any way, shape, or form. She referred to the people in violation of the Geneva Convention, paraded before her bare-chested and tattooed as being, quote unquote, their terrorists. What she skips is the thing that Judge Millett, who we're going to talk a lot about today because she was on two different 2-to-1 decisions that you and I are going to talk about in different segments at the DC Court of Appeals. Judge Millett said, we're talking about the intersection. You and I talk about the intersection a lot, but the intersection of Fifth Amendment due process and the Alien Enemies Act. And that's the thing that's always missing from the Trump administration. It's not that we're not in favor of the esoteric theory that bad people who committed crimes or are here illegally should be removed. The thing that we're against as a nation of laws, as a constitutional republic, is doing it through a kidnapping program in the middle of the night with no due process, so these people can stand up and prove that they are or are not part of the criminal terrorist gang before they are sent not to their home country, not to even a detention center under the U.S. Auspices, but to one of the world's worst prisons in El Salvador, where more than 300 people died in the last year and a half from quote unquote natural causes. If you think beating another human being to death is a natural cause, then you'll agree with President Bukele of El Salvador. This is a pay-to-play scheme that's immoral. We're paying Bukele $6 million to fill empty jail cells for himself so that Kristi Noem, and let's call it like it is, wearing her $60,000 Rolex, her hair extensions, her Botox, and her too tight t-shirt, can go hang out in front as an FU and a middle finger back to judges that are doing the nation's work and God's work, like Judge Boasberg and other judges who are standing between this abuse of power by the Trump administration and these individuals. This was, I don't care what Boasberg says about the Alien Enemies Act not being able to be used to kidnap and deport people. I'm going to go down there and thank President Bukele. So now our America, our democracy through Donald Trump is taking instruction on how to run its democracy from President Bukele, who puts in a social media post in the last couple of weeks directed to Donald Trump. He writes, you should go after the judges. I did it. You won't be able to get your agenda passed without doing that. Now we're taking instructions about how to run our democracy from El Salvador, and nobody finds that to be appalling. Let me leave one note of personal point here. That comment that she made, that ad campaign about don't come to this country, it's illegal. I was sitting in Miami a week ago at a restaurant where people were watching the Brazil-Argentina World Cup playoff. And so it's filled with people from lots of different nations, mainly Spanish-speaking ones. And she comes on with a commercial in English in which she said, effectively, that ad campaign that she just used in front of the prison there in El Salvador, which was, don't come to this country. If you're illegal, leave now. You may be able to come back one day. I assure you that 80 to 90% of the people in that room had troubled status and or knew people that had troubled status, close family members and the like. And this went over like a lead balloon in that room. I watched for the reaction. And this is what you and I have to, on the channel, have to continue to keep an eye on and promote as we move towards the midterms. One last thing about paybacks. Canada, I sent this, I think, to you guys. Canada is running billboards in Miami that they're paying for, in talking about the tariff war just means higher prices for you as Americans. They don't have their name on it, but the Canadians are running ads now on U.S. soil to talk about how tariffs harm the American pocketbook.
Look, as Doge, with its wrecking ball, is firing all of these people, destroying lives, targeting Social Security and Medicaid, shutting down Social Security offices. How is this regime spending money? And there's a reason why there's actually been more federal government spending in the last month than ever before in American history, because they're using it to fund the lavish lifestyle of Donald Trump's vacation, all of these trips by Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance going to Greenland, where he just shows up in a military base because Greenlanders don't want him there. I mean, these ad campaigns are hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars.
Ben, $30 million for his 9 golf weekends. $30 million of American taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, and think about all of the Social Security Administration offices that could have been kept open so Donald Trump can play golf while Elon Musk is doing that. I also think about the video of the Tufts PhD student, Rumeysa Ozturk, who has not been charged with a crime. If there's a crime that's committed, then charge with the crime. Let the American people know what the criminal act was. And there's a lot of situations where there are people in colleges that the Trump administration, the regime, doesn't like what they are saying, what they're publishing, but they're not saying what crimes are committed. In this horrific video of Rumeysa Ozturk, a PhD student studying in Tufts, pulled off the street, put into a detention center, and you have Rubio and you have the State Department people not saying, they're saying, oh, we want to stop the illegal activity. Well, then, okay, then say what the crime is. You know, we are a nation of laws, and what they are telling us, this regime, and they told us this all along, they don't like our system. They don't like due process. Due process is a process, and processes take time, and processes have things that you're like, well, it would actually be faster if we did this. It could be quicker if we did this. Why are we going about doing this? Because the totality of human experience and enlightened thinking that worked its way into our Constitution told us that this process is needed, because otherwise you have authoritarians that first they go for this group and you may go, well, I don't agree with that, so that's not affecting me. Then they go for this group and they're like, well, maybe I don't agree with that, but that's not coming for me. And then they come for you. And that's why it's important, whether you agree or disagree with the right, whatever your views are, you need to stand up for due process in the United States of America. That is our legal system. And when I see, as a lawyer who used to litigate against big firms, who have lots of friends who work in big firms, Michael Popok was a former big firm lawyer early on in his career. He started his own law firm as well, which I'll tell you about now, which is a small boutique that he has right now. But Popok started at one of these firms. You have law firms that are standing up to the regime and winning in court, and you've got law firms that are bending the knee and are cutting deals with Donald Trump to provide like services to the Trump regime agenda because they're so scared about losing clients. On the good guy or the good person and good women's side of this, you've got law firms like Perkins Coie, Jenner and Block, Wilmer Hale, who are fighting back. On the bad guy, bad person side of this, you've got firms like Skadden. You've got firms like Paul Weiss. Michael Popok, talk about what's happened in court, the wins by these firms that have fought back and those who have bent the knee.
Yeah, and I'll do it from the perspective as full disclosure, and I did a hot take up on Legal AF channel. I started my career proudly at Skadden Arps, cut my teeth there, close relationships there, including people that were on the executive committee as their careers continued. I always proudly said I was a Skadden lawyer that worked under Joe Flom, who ran that firm while I was still there before he passed away recently. And now I no longer feel that way. I will talk about what Skadden has done and the amount of tribute and extortion they have been willing to pay and sacrifice their professional ethics and their professional responsibility on the altar of their profits per partner. There's no other way to put it. Let me frame it this way, Ben, and then I'll get into the three losses, 2 in a row yesterday for the Trump administration on this issue, where good order and law firms that fight are winning at 1,000% clip, at a bat in 1,000. Regardless of the practice area that you choose to practice in or not practice in when you leave law school, if you're a member of the bar of any of our 50 states, I don't care if you're a transactional lawyer, mergers and acquisitions, intellectual property, a tech law, family law, divorce law, corporate law, litigation. You can divide the world into transactional, regulatory, and litigation, however you divide the world. When you left law school, when you took the bar exam, when you took the ethics test, and you got admitted and sworn in, regardless of where you went off in the rest of your world, you may never have seen a courtroom ever in your life because of the nature of your practice, but you took an oath as a profession to uphold the Constitution, and to abide by the rules of professional conduct or responsibility for your particular bar. I don't care if you became a tax lawyer or you became a family lawyer or a divorce lawyer or an M&A lawyer at Skadden, whatever it was, you are a lawyer. And if you didn't want to be a lawyer at this critical moment in time, and you wanted to just make money in business, there were plenty of ways to do that without taking the bar and becoming and swearing an oath. You could go to Wall Street. You could be an iBanker, an investment banker, hedge fund, private equity, become a broker or a trader, get an MBA, whatever you wanted to do. But once you became a lawyer, and that's how you ply your trade and your profession, then you had an obligation at this moment of crisis where Donald Trump on a retribution campaign has attempted to blacklist and make radioactive. The reporting is up to 14 law firms. He started with this 4, but up to 14 law firms. Now is the time that you stand up and you say, no, I'm not going to turn my pro bono department, which is where we give back to our society for free, and represent people who can't afford the Skadden ARPs at $2,000 an hour, but need amazing representation, whether it's an asylum case, a death penalty case, your Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss and your Sue and Rudy Giuliani case. This is where the pro bono programs, and the firms have used those pro bono programs in order to attract top talent, because they say to them, you'll get the experience that you wouldn't get working for corporate clients. We have this amazing pro bono program, and it's cohesive with our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, hiring Black and brown people and women and putting them in positions where they can benefit society. If you're willing to sacrifice all of that and give your pro bono program over to Donald Trump and give him, in the case of Paul Weiss, $40 million worth of free service, and just basically shutter your DEI commitment, and the same thing for Skadden, except now the number's $100 million. Okay, you should just, it's existential. We'll go out of business. Well, then you should go out of business. If that is your business model, then you should go out of business. And if you've watched, see what Skadden, my old firm, what Skadden, the lesson it learned from Paul Weiss, its neighbor down the street, paying $40 million, also run by corporate people, mergers and acquisition people, not litigators, is, well, it wasn't so bad. A couple of bad news cycles, a couple of bad articles. We'll take that. We're making $5 billion a year as a law firm. We'll take that. That's okay. We'll do that. As opposed to watching the lesson of Perkins Coie, who got a temporary restraining order issued by Beryl Howell, that it was a First Amendment violation, that the Trump administration can't bar and ban law firms from doing business with the government, from representing clients before the government, from getting contracts before the government, from representing clients in federal courts or before federal agencies. For some of the firms you and I are talking about today, it's 30, 40, 50% of their revenue, hundreds of millions of dollars, and Donald Trump knows it. So you either get your temporary restraining order as a First Amendment violation and an abuse of power from Judge Beryl Howell 2 weeks ago for Perkins Coie, and you follow that lead, which Jenner and Block did, which Wilmer Hale, we know it's got a longer name, but we know these firms as Wilmer and Jenner and Block. Those firms said, F this. We took an oath. We are being abused, and by extension, our clients, and we're being retaliated against, and we need to do something about it. And shout out to, I'll talk about the orders, but shout out to the law firms that are representing those law firms, because they have law firms which are now on the radar screen for Donald Trump. Cooley, which I know because I had given Cooley work when I was in-house counsel, Cooley is representing Jenner and Block. And of all people, Paul Clement, who used to be the rightest of right, who is the rightest of right wing and former Solicitor General in the Bush administration, the one who was in favor of waterboarding, the one who was against gay marriage and gays in the military, he is representing Wilmer Hale in his case. So it makes strange bedfellows. I may not agree. I never thought I'd say I agree with Paul Clement on anything, but I agree with him here in terms of his defense of the profession. So we had back-to-back hearings in 2 different courtrooms in the same courthouse in DC on Friday, late in the day, but the same result. One little twist before I get there. Paul Clement, when he filed his case on behalf of Wilmer Hale, tried to get Beryl Howell as the judge. She had already issued a temporary restraining order on an almost identical executive order blacklisting that firm. He tried to argue it was a related case. He directly filed it to Beryl Howell. Beryl Howell, I'm sure, wanted it. but decided that based on the factors, it was not a related case, even though the same type of executive order, and she kicked it back to random selection. By random choice, we'll talk a lot about that when we get to Judge Boasberg. It ended up with Richard Leon, who's a Bush appointee.
Yep.
On the other side, the random wheel assigned it to Judge Bates, who's another Bush appointee. And both of them found First Amendment violations. I'll tell you, Bates got really pissed off during the hearing, the reporting about the hearing itself. Bates, in talking to the lawyer for the Department of Justice, said, well, is the firm barred or not barred from going onto federal property and visiting with agencies to do their job for their clients? Well, those guidelines haven't yet been completely fleshed out. I would think if you're in my courtroom on a temporary injunction about the ramifications of an executive order, you would know if the answer to that question. So what Bates did is a very simple order. He said the motion for temporary restraining order is granted. You are not to blacklist them. I want a status report about compliance of every federal agency by Monday at 12 o'clock. Judge Leon wrote a 6-page decision. He said, this is retaliation on its face. This is a First Amendment violation. And then he quoted, just so people understand what's at stake here, he quoted a executive lawyer for Wilmer Hale, who said that they have 100 matters right now before the federal government for clients, that 40% of their revenue comes from representing clients before the federal government to the tune of $500 million, that this would effectively put them out of business. That's the irreparable harm. I'm granting the TRO. And without coordinating with Judge Bates, he also entered a status report requirement, joint requirement for Monday at 4 o'clock. So where are we now? 3-0 for firms that are fighting, and $140 million paid by Skadden and by Paul Weiss for firms that are more concerned with their profits per partner than what's right in America.
History will have a very dark and dim view on the firms that submitted during this moment. It is a travesty, in my view, for anyone who supports democracy, who considers those firms as really a place where, you know, you can practice law under your ethical rule. Just giving you my opinion, given your ethical obligations as a lawyer, firms that have become agents of fascism, it's a horrible place to be. And, you know, I'm certainly going to let my law students know they can choose wherever they want to work, but I think it's important that they know what the stakes are here, at least when it comes to just fundamental democracy and what the rulings are, and then they can decide where they want to work.
You know who put it best, Ben? Judge, and I wrote it down. Judge Kofenor, who issued it's hard to believe, the first temporary restraining order 5 days into this administration on birthright citizenship in San Francisco. We now have 70 or 80 injunctions, but he was the first. He said out loud at that first hearing, and it stuck with me, I don't want history to look back and say, during this era, where were the judges and where were the lawyers? And for Skadden and Paul Weiss, they're going to have to look their future clients or current clients, and like you said, law school candidates in the eye, and people are already quitting that firm. There's at least two that have been public about it, and say, where were they? You know, where were they? You know, where were the lawyers and law firms in Nazi Germany, I guess is what we're trying to say.
Absolutely.
And judges.
I'll tell you where the Michael Popok is starting his own law firm and doing a great job. I am so proud of Michael Popok for starting his own law firm. Just in the past 35 days or so, it's off to a great start. Michael handles catastrophic injuries. So he has cases, for example, like trucking accident cases that involved wrongful death, car accidents that involve wrongful death, people who have gotten catastrophic injuries from different types of accidents, sexual harassment and sexual assault cases, wrongful termination cases, medical malpractice cases. And because It's a boutique firm. You can't handle all of the cases. So usually the bigger catastrophic cases. So if you or anybody you know has a case like that, or a family member or a friend or anything like that, Michael Popok, where can people go? And a lot of people have been reaching out to you. So I just tell people, reach out to Popok's firm if there's a case like this. Where do they go?
Yeah, we've had over 1,000 people reach out. We've got an easy website. It's thepopokfirm.com. We'll put it up on the screen. And we also have a very easy 1-800 number that's staffed. It's 1-877-POPOK-AF. It is the intersection of people, the court system, and lives. And that's why I wanted to be involved.
Well, it's doing great. Reach out to Michael Popok. We're going to take our first quick break of the show. Also, a reminder for you to check out the Legal AF YouTube channel. It's soaring. I want to try to get that 1 million subscribers in the next few months. So make sure you're subscribed to the Legal AF YouTube channel as well. And by the way, you can check out the Midas Touch Substack at MidasPlus.com while you're at it. Let's take our first quick break of the show. We've got a lot to discuss when we're back.
As an attorney, podcast anchor, husband, and a father of a 9-month-old, I can't afford to eat empty calories that don't contribute to my overall health. But even the term nutrient dense sounds boring and may have you picturing very unfun and unsatisfying foods. And then I found Cook Unity and their fresh flavors for every diet, including keto, gluten-free, and GLP-1 balanced. I was blown away when I found out that at the heart of Cook Unity is a group of all-star chefs who craft each meal with local in-season ingredients that are high in protein, fiber, and unsaturated fats. Have weight goals? Well, you can crush them like an empty beer can to the forehead with meals crafted to be nutrient-dense and delicious from Cook Unity. And get this, you aren't going to get a giant box of frozen foods with Cook Unity. Oh no. Their meals are sent fresh, not frozen, and delivered directly to your door, all at a fraction of the usual cost and time. So go to cookunity.com/legalaf or enter code legalaf before checkout for 50% off your first week. In our household with limited time, we focus on getting the most nutrition out of everything we put in our mouths. And seafood is our go-to protein. So when we saw the Chipotle lime salmon with Brussels by Ruben Garcia, our heart sang and our mouths watered. And as an added bonus, it is easier to achieve your weight goals with healthy gourmet meals made by top chefs that are ready in minutes. The best way to describe Cook Unity is easy and effortless. Choose from hundreds of meals prepared by award-winning chefs, or let them choose for you. No cleanup or meal planning required, and meals are delivered fully cooked. Just heat in as little as 5 minutes. With Cook Unity, you can enjoy restaurant-quality meals for a fraction of the price. Subscriptions start as low as $11 a meal. Crush your health goals with mouth-watering chef-crafted meals delivered straight to your door. Go to cookunity.com/legalaf or enter code legalaf before checkout for 50% off your first week. That's 50% off your first week by using code legalaf or going to cookunity.com/legalaf. Before our next sponsor, Laundry Sauce, I thought, well, I don't really have a choice other than Ocean Breeze or Meadows spraying laundry detergent for my clothes. And let's be real, guys, doing laundry, well, sucks. But what doesn't have to suck is your laundry detergent. That's why Laundry Sauce has created the world's best smelling laundry pods. So your clothes don't have to smell like your grandmother's perfume anymore. Imagine stepping into a room smelling like Australian sandalwood. This rugged, warm, earthy scent is guaranteed to get you compliments with every hug. And warning, using Laundry Sauce will cause you to be known as the guy who always smells amazing. And I hope that's okay with you. Don't stress about remembering to put on cologne, because everything you run through the wash will now have a cologne quality scent. Each Laundry Sauce pod is highly concentrated with more advanced cleaning power than traditional liquid laundry detergents and is enriched with bioenzymes. They don't just smell incredible, they tackle the toughest stains while also reviving fabrics. For a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use code LegalAF20 at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code LegalAF20. It's time to get saucy. Laundry Sauce's jumbo-sized laundry pods are ultra concentrated with more cleaning power per ounce than typical watered-down laundry detergents. They don't just smell incredible, they also tackle the toughest stains without harsh chemicals that degrade your fabrics. Look, Laundry Sauce just launched their newest expertly crafted scent, Oregon Mint. The Oregon Mint is sourced ethically, sustainably, and transparently through Essex Mint Farms in Oregon, one of the largest mint farms on earth. Feel transported to an herb garden by the sea and have distinctly clean and refreshing laundry like never before with this one-of-a-kind limited release scent. Put your new luxury laundry obsession on autopilot and save an extra 15 to 20% off every order when you subscribe. Maybe the best part about Laundry Sauce, they offer a full money-back guarantee. If you don't get better smelling, cleaner laundry, you get a full refund. No questions asked. For a limited time, our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use code LegalAF20 at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code LegalAF20. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell good, look good, feel good with Laundry Sauce.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors right there. The discount codes are in the description below. I want to talk about two Judge Boasberg rulings. The first on the use of the by the Trump regime of the Signal app in violation of the Presidential Records Act, a case that was randomly assigned to Judge Boasberg, and then Judge Boasberg extending his injunction against the Trump regime using the Alien Enemies Act war powers to further kidnap migrants in the United States and send them to concentration camps in El Salvador without due process. That a temporary restraining order was extended to mid-April. The Trump regime appealed to the D.C. Circuit. A 2-1 ruling affirmed what Judge Boasberg was doing, and now the Trump regime is appealing that to the United States Supreme Court as well. Before tossing it to you, Popok, I want to show two videos first. The first, I want to show John Kecker from the Kecker Van Nest Peters law firm. John Kecker runs one of the big law firms in the United States, and he's a fighter. First off, he was in Vietnam. You should go and read his story. He was one of the chief lawyers in Iran-Contra. I mean, this guy is one of the top lawyers out there. He put out a powerful statement to the legal community about fighting back against the Trump regime and not submitting. And I brought him on and featured him on Meiselas/Legal AF. I just want to share with you because this guy is one of the kind of top litigators in the legal community. Here's what he had to say about fighting back against the Trump regime. Let's play it.
My message is, if you're good, you're going to be okay. Don't let a bully push you around and make you humiliate yourself in order to either please him or make the clients comfortable. If a client doesn't want to have a lawyer who's got some guts and some principles, then let the client go someplace else and you'll hope to be against them in litigation. But my message is stand up and don't let this happen, and don't be just scared about you. Be scared about the entire situation, the entire rule of law, the entire role of lawyers in this democracy.
I want to share with you this video of Attorney General Pam Bondi, but let's do it after Popok. First, I toss to you, and then maybe chat about these two Judge Boasberg rulings. Let's frame it in the legal first, and then let me show you what the Trump regime is doing, which is not the legal stuff. It's the propaganda. I'll toss it to you, though, for Judge Boasberg.
And you'll do the process. So there's always two worlds in a split screen with Donald Trump, right? We've talked about it. a lot when he was criminal defendant Trump or criminal convict Trump. There's the world where extrajudicially outside the courthouse, he, his lawyers, here in this case, the attorney general, press secretary, Alina Habba, White House counselor, soon to be acting U.S. attorney, New Jersey, they attack Elon Musk, the federal judiciary, the federal judges, insane, leftist, corrupt, over and over and over again, creating their own hermetically sealed loop of echo chamber. And then they, as we've said before, in that ecosystem, they activate their social media campaign, their rapid response team, their paid social media people, and then we're off and running with this clarion call for the head of the federal judge. So bad that the Supreme Court's head had to step forward and say, enough, pump the brakes with Justice Roberts. Now we're in the courtroom with Judge Boasberg sort of two ways. And then later we're going to talk about some rulings at the DC Court of Appeals level where one 3-judge panel made two rulings, but one judge flipped to support the Trump administration at I thought, a bad moment. Boasberg gets assigned randomly the Signal Gate case about, the 18 people on a Signal chat, which is barely encrypted, talking about war plans against the Houthis in the Suez Canal region and their military strikes that they were planning, including target packages and types of equipment. Turns out that much of what was discussed in the Signal chat, which was first arranged by Mike Waltz, but Pete Hegseth doesn't seem to understand what confidential and top secret is either. New reporting is he's brought his wife to a number of the meetings when he was abroad. The meetings where he's caught with an alcohol glass at meetings with the Europeans. He also brought his brother and his wife along with him to these secret meetings. Not great. And so this whole group sort of gets together. The Israelis are upset because it was their intelligence from that region, the Suez Canal around Egypt, that was discussed in the Signal chat. So it sort of torched and burnt the Israelis. Pilots for the military, current and former, are upset. Or as one put it, who's currently in the military, the Trump administration, is going to get us killed by talking about operations in an unsecure way before we've launched them, allowing our enemy to know where we are and shooting us out of the sky. So we have this. I'm framing the issue. It's been downplayed, attempted to be downplayed. Of course, it's backfired for the Trump administration outside the courtroom. It's a glitch. Mike Waltz learned a lesson. He's going to be fired any day now, by the way. In the courtroom, a group that often sues for transparency in government brought a lawsuit about, very simple and very ingenious in how simple it was. Didn't have to get into whether it's top secret, not top secret, classified, not classified, intelligence classified, military, who cares? It's a federal record. And the fact that they were using an app that by its nature auto deletes, like Snapchat, but for the military and security purposes, they said that is a violation of the Federal Records Act because they're doing the people's business. These are the people's records. These are transactional communications that need to be preserved for this administration, future administrations, and the people. But of course, Donald Trump, what did he learn from Mar-a-Lago and how that was ultimately handled? He can get away with anything when it comes to top secret, classified, compartmented CISA stuff. So of course his administration doesn't give a shit about any of that. The case gets filed for violation of Federal Records Act to stop or enjoin all of the people on that chain and all departments from continuing to use Signal and from deleting these documents. It gets assigned to Boasberg. Pam Bondi takes to the airwaves and says, isn't it a coincidence that Boasberg, the radical left lunatic judge, got assigned to this along with the Alien Enemies Act case? Yeah, it is. It's not a coincidence. He spent there were two moments of levity in the first hearing with Boasberg. The first was he spent an inordinate amount of time at the very beginning talking about the random selection process in the court system and how every judge has an electronic card and the wheel spins. When I started my career in federal court, there literally was a wheel. Okay, I'm going to sound like I was wearing a powdered wig. You know, when you watch the lotto numbers being picked and a ping pong ball popped up, it was like that. There were ballots in a giant thing, and the clerk would pick out a judge's name that way. Okay, we do it now through an electronic wheel. But he felt he had to do that because he knew he was going to get the grief that why did I get this case again? Look, there's only 24 judges in the DC courthouse, which is hard to believe given the amount the volume that they work on. So yes, there's a 1 in 24 chance, but it happens. And there's so many cases, hundreds of cases against the Trump administration already. Of course, there's going to be overlapping judges or judges that get assigned to more than one case. So he spends the time doing that. Then after listening to all of it, he outfoxes, no pun intended, the Trump administration, because he gets them to agree to an injunction that between you and me, I'm not sure he had the power to grant, because I'm not sure the irreparable harm part was there. What he wanted was them to agree to preserve all of the signal records from March 11th to March 15th and not delete them. The lawyer for the Department of Justice was busy tap dancing and stammering in front of the judge. We're trying. The Department of Justice is working. We've made demand on all the departments, and some have cooperated, like the Treasury Department, and others we haven't heard from, like the Department of Defense and Hegseth, which did not give the judge any great comfort. And whenever you hear the Department of Justice is on it, they have no credibility in these courtrooms for obvious reasons. And so that the judges don't trust that. But he got the lawyer for the Department of Justice to agree effectively to his order that they would not delete and they would preserve those documents. Now he can get out of the injunction world and he can get to the merits of the violation of the Federal Records Act. But so the reporting is that he issued that particular order. At the end, the other moment of levity, which I love, because Boasberg is getting abused. And I'm sure it's showing up in his attacks on him in social media. And I'm sure there's an increase in violent rhetoric aimed at him that the federal marshals are going to have that are dealing with. There's a fight in the Alien Enemies Act case we'll talk about next, in which they're arguing at the Trump level, which is a ridiculous position to take, that his oral proclamation, his injunction at 6:35 2 Saturdays ago to stop the planes and stop the deportation under the phony war power declaration proclamation by Donald Trump. There's an hour gap there where it looks like they were violating. They said, well, no, because it took an hour to put it up on the docket. That wasn't the order. That was so the public can keep track through an accurate docket of what happened in the case. The order is what you're told in court. That's why when you're a lawyer, you take down notes, you get the transcript, you make sure you understand the parameters and contours of your injunction against you or the order. When I hear the judge say, which he said in the transcript, pardon me, I'm ready to rule. As soon as the judge says, that's the magic words. As soon as the judge says, I'm ready to rule, you and everybody on your team takes out your pads or your computers, if you have your computer, and you start to write, because that's the ruling. So there's this fight about oral versus written. So the judge said at the end of the hearing about Signalgate, he said, here's my order. You're going to preserve. You agree? Yes. Okay, great. Oh, don't worry. You don't have to worry about writing it down. I'll be issuing something in writing. And then he just stood and looked at them, which I love that he is able, to have that sense of humor in that context. So that's on the Signalgate side. You want me to switch to the Alien Enemies Act up to the DC Appellate Court?
Let's do it. Switch it up.
Okay. All right. We got sometimes panels of 3 judges that are randomly assigned to a case are held together for more than one appeal. Depends on how the appeals come in. So back to back, Wednesday and Friday, we had, I'll cover the first one first. We had the same 3-judge panel. Walker, Trump appointee. Millett, Obama. Henderson, Bush. I almost said Reagan. Bush. Okay, same 3 judges. Henderson being the wild card. I'll tell you about that in a minute. They also get assigned to the case of the joint appeal about whether Donald Trump could just decapitate and put out of business effectively the Merit Protection Service Board and the National Labor Relations Board, which are For all the unions that didn't support Kamala Harris, you got a lot of explaining to do now, because the two entities that were around to protect your workers have now effectively, for the duration of this administration, been put out of business by Donald Trump and by this 3-judge panel. So the 3-judge panel, same 3-judge panel, ruled for Donald Trump in that case, ruled against Donald Trump in the Alien Enemies Act. It went up on a hearing on the Alien Enemies Act. And the only issue in both of these cases is whether a stay on the injunction that was issued by the various judges to stop Trump's abuse of power, whether that injunction is going to stay in place while the duration of the appeal is litigated over the next 3, 6, 9 months. What is the status quo that's being preserved? That's the only issue. It gets to the merits because you've got to look at the merits of the underlying appeal in order to determine whether somebody's going to likely to succeed or not. But it's only about a stay. And there's certain factors that an appellate court can use about stay under a certain factor test that have to be analyzed. On the Alien Enemies Act, all three, there was no real agreement except 2 judges in concurrence, Henderson and Millett, said the Trump administration is likely to lose. They overreached in using the Alien Enemies Act, or as Henderson put it, what you're pointing to, this terrorist gang that's in America and has been in America for quite some time, that's a migration issue. That's an immigration issue. Migration is not a predatory incursion. Migration is not an invasion or a war. And in order for you to have that power, for me to give you that power through the Constitution, there has to be a war. And we don't have war with Venezuela. Millett is the one, she also in concurrence said effectively the same thing. Millett went further in oral argument and said, where is the due process? You can do everything that you're doing, but do it in front of a judge, an immigration judge, and give them due process. Give them an opportunity to have a lawyer and prove whether they are or are not part of that gang. And then that might be a different story. But the Nazis, suspected Nazis in America, were given better due process rights than you're giving these individuals who you've sent off to El Salvador. That was the big headline for that. So in a 2-1, with Walker, the Trumper in dissent, who said, this is really a Texas matter. Why are we in D.C.? This should have been done with a writ of habeas corpus individually down in Texas while they were still there. But they're not still there. They're in El Salvador. That's the problem. So they upheld the Boasberg decision 2-1, keeping the injunction in place. Donald Trump doesn't like it. He's filed an application, the 7th application to the United States Supreme Court. And as of our recording, the Supreme Court is sitting on it. They haven't gotten the 4 votes yet to ask for a briefing schedule. So they haven't assigned, usually I would have thought if they were really interested, when they're interested in something, within a day, they will give the other side an opportunity to file a brief and they'll rule thereafter. They did that in a couple of cases recently. Here, I'm still waiting for the briefing schedule. They may not find this that interesting, meaning they can't find 4 votes to take up this application or 5 votes to support Trump. And we'll follow it here on Midas Touch and on Legal AF. That's the full completion. I'll take a breather before we move on to the other matter today.
When I was doing this, it was like a switch hitter, like a baseball season starting. That's why I love it. When you said switch it up, that's why I was doing that. I want to call a quick break, our last quick break of the show, and then I want to talk about the Trump propaganda. I'll take that piece of it. But then there were some not so good rulings in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. You talked about the good rulings there. What's important on a show like this is that we let you know the good, the bad, and the ugly. I hope that's one of the reasons you like Legal AF, because we're not going to sugarcoat a bad ruling and its implications or gloss over it. We'll talk about that, but we'll talk about a good ruling as well. Don't worry, we're not going to finish, though, on the bad note. We'll finish on the note of the Supreme Court making actually a good ruling, a common sense ruling when it comes to ghost guns. The fact that it wasn't unanimous, though, makes you scratch your head there for a second. I want to remind everybody, though, about the Legal AF YouTube channel. It's soaring right now. It's on its way to 1 million subscribers. I'd love to get that Legal AF YouTube channel 1 million subscribers. I'll remind you about Midas MidasPlus.com, which is the Midas Touch Substack. And then finally, so proud that Michael Popok has started his own law firm. The types of case they handle at the Popok Law Firm are catastrophic injury cases, car accidents, trucking accidents, medical malpractice, wrongful termination cases, sexual harassment, sexual assault cases like that. So if you or a loved one has a case or a friend that you know has a case, the consultations with the Popok Law Firm are free. We had originally got so many inquiries of people who wanted help in these areas that Popok said, you know what, I'm going to start my own law firm. And Popok, it's doing well. Where can people find out about your firm if they have a case?
Always appreciate your support. And, we stand on the shoulders of what we've been building here on Legal AF. It's easy. www.thepopokfirm.com is the website. It brings you right to the free consultation form and all the different ways to have your matter assessed. And if we take the case, we're going to do it on a contingency meeting for free unless we all get paid, unless you recover. And then, of course, the 800 number is easy to remember as well. 1-877-POPOK AF.
Check that out and check out our pro-democracy sponsors. We'll be right back after our last quick break of the show.
I'm so excited to share with you guys an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness. C15 is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in 90 years. And get this, studies have confirmed that it's 3 times better, broader, and safer than omega-3. It's pretty simple. Essential nutrients keep our cells healthy, which keeps us healthy. If you want to get sciencey about it, studies show that C15 works by strengthening our cells, improving our mitochondrial function, and protecting us against damaging free radicals. The result? Better long-term metabolic liver and heart health. It turns out many of us are deficient in C15, which results in weaker cells that make less energy and quit working earlier than they should. All of that makes us age faster, sleep poorly, feel sluggish. Is this sounding familiar? Fatty 15 is a science-backed, award-winning vegan and pure C15 supplement. By replenishing our cells with that essential C15 nutrient, Fatty 15 effectively repairs cells and restores our long-term health. Go science! Fatty 15 is made from a patented, pure, and oxidation-resistant C15 powder derived from plants. It's vegan-friendly, free of flavors, fillers, allergens, or preservatives. C15 is the only ingredient in Fatty 15, 100% pure. C15 works in multiple ways. It repairs age-related damage to cells, protects them from future breakdown, boosts mitochondrial energy output, and activates pathways in the body that help regulate our sleep, mood, and natural repair mechanisms that support our overall health. This functionality leads to a myriad of exciting benefits now and as we get older, namely improved metabolic liver and heart health, smoother functioning joints, deeper sleep, and healthier hair and skin and nails. Now that's essential. It comes in a gorgeous, reusable glass bamboo jar, and refill capsules are shipped to your door quarterly in pouches made from recycled materials. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish our C15 levels and restore your long-term health. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/legalaf and use code legalaf at checkout. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Delete Me knows your privacy is worth protecting. Sign up and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. As a well-known podcast anchor who's active on YouTube about every hour, privacy when I turn off the mic and camera is really important to me, especially to help protect my loved ones against bad people who try to hurt you through identity theft and harassment. Have you ever been a victim of identity theft, harassment, doxing? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting LEGAL, L-E-G-A-L, to 64000. The only way to get 20% off is to text LEGAL to 64,000. That's LEGAL to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to those pro-democracy sponsors right there. The discount codes are in the description below. And thank you to everybody who is also reaching out to the Popok firm. I can actually see the calls that come in and the emails as they come in real time. Also, if you forget the number or the email address, we'll say it again at the end of the show, but it's in the description below as well, how you contact the Popok firm. Hey, Michael, I said as we got back, I would talk about the Trump propaganda portion of this. And basically, their Attorney General, Pam Bondi, at this point, is nothing more than a spokesperson who goes on Fox, and not really a good one on that. I mean, say what you want about Merrick Garland, the former Attorney General, but he was at least somebody who understood, in theory, what the role of an Attorney General was like in terms of you're not I guess I set my standards fairly low with that description, but at least it's not someone who's on Fox every day. Now, I think we all feel very strongly would be putting an understatement, that a lot of what's occurring now could have been avoided if I think Merrick Garland didn't underestimate. And again, I'm really, I think I'm saying the understatement of the year, made sure that the crimes that needed to be prosecuted were actually prosecuted. But there's a whole other show and multiple other Legal AF shows on that topic. But I guess the point I'm making is that Pam Bondi should not be on Fox News every single night, whining and complaining and acting like a bad PR flack. Here was one of the more recent appearances where she's there like attacking federal judges whose experience whose legal knowledge compared to hers is the difference between a mountain and a little ant molehill or something. I'm not good at descriptions like that. But anyway, play the clip.
Pam, thanks for being with us this afternoon. Let's start, if we might, from the decision by Judge Boasberg. Tomorrow is your deadline to answer questions. Those questions include the following: what time did the plane take off from U.S. soil? Where did it leave from? What time did it leave U.S. airspace? And what time did it land in a foreign country? You have, 4, 5, 6 questions the judge wants answers to regarding the details of those flights over the weekend. How will you respond at the Department of Justice?
Well, our lawyers are working on this. We will answer appropriately, but what I will tell you is this judge has no right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. And he came in on an emergency basis on a Saturday with very, very short notice, if any, to our attorney to run in the courtroom. And this has been a pattern with these liberal judges. You just spoke about that. It's been a pattern with what they've been doing. This judge had no right to do that. They're meddling in foreign affairs. They're meddling in our government.
Again, the defamation of our court system. I mean, quite literally, federal judges hear things on emergency bases. This is the role of the federal judiciary. This was never a thing in the past before the Trump whining and victimhood permeated politics. That was even a question when I went to law school, when Popok went to law school, slightly before I went to law school, and those before Michael Popok, who went to law school before he. These weren't questions of import or of any substance, because this is the role of what the federal courts actually do. And as a result of the Trump regime defying the initial court order and coming up with this excuse about, it was an oral order or whatever, we've been covering on the Midas Touch Network all of these stories of a guy named Andres, who's a gay hairstylist political exile from Venezuela, not Tren de Aragua, now sent to El Salvador's concentration camps, probably going to die in a concentration camp, while Kristi Noem parades in front of a group of prisoners at that concentration camp. You know, there's the story about the DJ, the musician, the story about the individual who's here lawfully, asylum seeker, the story of someone who had a tattoo that was for autism awareness because a family member had autism, and that was said, oh, you're Tren de Aragua, that's a gang sign. Autism awareness, that's a gang sign. Even when the initial ICE detention people told him, you're not a gang member, it's okay. They sent this guy to El Salvador. They sent women to the concentration camp in El Salvador, and then they had to be sent back because it's a male-only concentration camp. The soccer player, football player who had the Real Madrid tattoo, had the Trump regime complied with the initial order, those people would not be killed in concentration camps. And the question is, are you okay? Even if there were some gang members on that plane, which I think they should then have gone through the process where they're determined they're a gang member. You don't release them into general population. You make sure that they get the biggest penalties for the crimes that are committed. I'm not okay with people being sent to El Salvador concentration camps without due process. Again, call me old-fashioned about my interpretation of a law and order nation, but due process is something that should exist. You know, now you have all these people in concentration camps under the authority of the United States flag, dying and being murdered, and the rest of their life there in concentration camps. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's a despicable and shameful time in American history where this is taking place. And then you see the propaganda that she does and goes, the judge, the lefty judge. Look, this was a judge who was first appointed by George W. Bush to the Superior Court in Washington, D.C., then appointed by former President Obama. He's been the chief judge of the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Services Act, chief judge of Washington, D.C., Yale law student. By the way, when Trump goes after Wilmer Hale, Judge Nichols, the Trump appointee D.C. federal judge, worked at Wilmer Hale's as a partner. You know, and so you have these ridiculous, clownish, no offense to real clowns, as opposed to these Trump fascist clowns, because being a clown is a real profession, but being a Trump clown isn't. I mean, this is not the way the legal system works. I want to flag that. We should all be against that, regardless of your political party. And it's a bunch of nonsense injected into the veins of that Fox, I put this in quote, news audience, and it's horrific. Popok.
Well, before you leave, Boasberg said it best. He said when he did his hearing, he said, you understand, for the Department of Justice, you understand I'm not ordering the release of any of these people. I'm not ordering that the jails be emptied and these people be put into like the general population of America. You understand that, right? Yes. Okay, Mr. Ensign, you understand that you can continue to arrest people if you want for now under the Alien Enemies Act, the way my injunction is written. You understand that? And you can keep them in Guantanamo and all different places. The thing you can't do is to deport them without due process to a foreign prison under a phony war proclamation. I mean, that's the summary of that. And you got Pam Bondi, who I'm nostalgic always for the Biden administration and how they handle things, like when we see Signalgate and the rest. But to see an attorney general as a cheap political hack going after, you know, when she was saying he has no right as a judge to do anything to review the Alien Enemies Act. Well, actually, he does. And if you read the 1953 case of Ludecky, you would know that anything that has to do with words, their meaning, interpretation, and whether the triggering events to give a president power or not, even the utmost constitutional, absolute core presidential power like war powers, gets reviewed by a single judge in a single district, going up to a 3-judge panel of a court of appeal on the way to the United States Supreme Court. And every major case and constitutional case that you and I have ever studied and that we've ever covered has come up almost the exact same way. So this malarkey that this drug that they try to peddle to the American people, that this is extraordinary, a judge interpreting the language of a statute or a constitutional provision. Yeah, ever since 1803 in Marbury versus Madison, that is the role of the federal courts. What they want is the thing you started this podcast with. They want the frictionless ability of an absolute monarch to make rulings without any pushback at all. He's got a doormat for a Congress, except for the Democrats doing their part. He wants a doormat or a limp noodle of federal judges so that in the short amount of time that he has, and boy, does it seem longer, of being the president for the last time, he can do maximum damage. It is that friction between the plates and the courts doing their role to keep the presidency in line, the presidency doing its role against the federal courts and Congress. It is that tension, that friction that Louis Brandeis talked about in the 1920s, that is our checks and balance system. Or as Judge Beryl Howell put it recently, they are trying to upend the constitutional order of things that have existed for over 200 years. And so we have another decision, just a transition, batter up, transition, same three-judge panel, Henderson, Millett, and Walker. Except now, whereas Henderson was like, I'm not letting you exercise war powers when there's no war, so sit down. Here, when Donald Trump decided to decapitate and put into mothballs the National Labor Relations Board and its expertise about labor and collective bargaining matters and illegal practices in the workplace, and the Merit Service Protection Board, established to protect federal workers and the civil service area that was reformed in the 1970s. And he decided, I got a way. I'll get rid of the quorum. I'll fire the Democrats. I won't replace them with anybody. And they don't have a quorum, so I don't have to worry about it. No more National Labor Relations Board and no more Merit Service Protection Board. Well, multiple judges, starting with Beryl Howell and Rudy Contreras, and at the time, Amy Berman Jackson, decided, no, you can't fire the special counsel, the Merit Service Protection Board, or the National Labor Relations Board board member, because Congress established them as, yes, they're in the executive branch, but they are independent, they are bipartisan, and they don't exercise enough executive power to run afoul of a long line of cases starting in the 1930s, with a case that you and I and the rest of us refer to as Humphrey's Executor, named after a case. And that case said, as long as this thing doesn't exercise that much executive power, and it was set up bipartisan, and it does these administrative things, even adjudicative things, it can't be fired at will by the president unless there's cause. None of these people, there are no cause. The only cause was he didn't like the color of their party, if you know what I mean. They were blue, but they're also women in black. So that case, which was reaffirmed in 2020 in a case called Celia Law, that is 90 years of precedent. Now, the three-judge panel, again, Henderson flipped this time, the Bush appointee, and sided with Walker, the Trump appointee, and decided that they're going to throw over the game board of 90 years of precedent and say Humphrey's executor is questionable. And it's not really, it's really the outer boundaries, and find these boards are exercising more executive power than the Humphreys court had anticipated. And therefore it violates the separation of powers. That's how they got there. Millett, the judge who in the other case said Nazis have more due process, she's livid. And in her order, her dissent, she said, you are the only federal court to have ever found, after Humphreys in 1937 or 35, and after Celia, and all the times the Supreme Court has affirmed it, to find that a president can fire without cause people with agencies and these do not operate in the world of exercising too much executive power. They have barely power at all, but they are important. And all you're doing, she called it out, is you're letting Trump remove the quorum, so there's not enough people to operate, effectively incapacitating them, decapitating them, despite the fact that Congress has funded them and established them for a reason. So it's the executive branch who's, if anybody's violating the separation of powers, it's the executive branch. And the status quo, as you started the hot take or the podcast with, the status quo is keeping them in their chairs. But now by a 2-to-1 decision, they're fired again from their roles, meaning these two entities stopped existing. And the parties, the plaintiff side, the appellant side, have asked the court to stay their ruling to give them an opportunity to go out to the United States Supreme Court, and we haven't gotten a ruling on that yet. But you can see, you and I half joke a lot about, tell us who the judges are, and we can tell you what their judicial philosophy is and how on a lot of cases they're going to come out. And so when I heard Henderson, who'd been on a wrong side of a couple of other cases involving Donald Trump in the past, was the swing vote here, if you will. Mm-hmm. So you can see where she's at. No on war power, phony war powers, okay on unifying the executive branch and letting Donald Trump do whatever he wants with all these agencies.
You know, this is where I see a lot of quote unquote conservative jurists kind of over intellectualize us into fascism and view this as some kind of fascinating thought experiment into how smart they are and these kind of esoteric ideas. And it's very weird, because you would think that the same panel that basically says, hey, Trump, you're acting as a dictator by kidnapping people and sending them to concentration camps, would also be the same people who go, hey, you're acting as a dictator by firing these people in independent boards. But you see where I say they over-intellectualize it. The issue is not that they're saying, Trump, you have a right to fire the people. Trump didn't win the case. What Trump won is that these right-wing judges who ruled against him in the other case, in the 2-to-1 decision, were basically like, what is to be or not to be? That is the question, right? It was, what is the status quo? Is the status quo now, because they're fired, the fact that they're fired so they don't return? And thus, if we just hermetically seal what's happening, you could still fight, but it'll take you 2 years to fight for your job back, and you may ultimately win the merits, but the status quo is the termination. Or is the status quo the fact that these people had a job and now they no longer have a job, which is what the people who were fired were arguing. The status quo is return us to the job. And so you could understand the thought experiment, if this was a law school class, argue this. Well, the termination happened. Thus, once you go to court, ergo, they're fired. So the status quo before they filed is that they're fired. But you're like, okay, well, now you've just justified dictatorship, you freaking idiots. And that, to me, is a lot of the issues with these John Roberts style conservatives who act like they're so smart. You know, it's like, watching the Harlem Globetrotters play basketball. And it's like, okay, but you'll never actually beat the freaking team if you just spin the ball around on your fingers, go, like that's not how you actually beat the dictatorship at the end of the day. It's like, I get it, you're smart, but you just made a freaking stupid ruling.
Do you think, let me ask you, I totally agree with that. Do you also think that Henderson, knowing what she ruled on Wednesday, do you think this was a makeup call? The umpire continuing baseball saying, wait, that guy was out at first base. Well, you think it was a makeup call by her to give the Trump administration one? It's
their bizarre. I saw it in law school. I was in Paul Clement's class in law school. Paul Clement was a professor who taught clinics at Georgetown Law Center. And so, you can have a guy like Clement who's like, I'm going to fight for the law firms against this overreach. But, the Patriot Act does allow a lot of torture, the unitary, it's just I do think that I don't want to hold, this over the head of Mayor Eric Adams. So I'm going to think there should be a full dismiss. It's why I've always said you can't run a media network or anything trying to actually court these people and be like, come on, we're the pro-democracy crew. What you have to do is just be in your own lane, speak the truth every day. And if they want to join because they feel shame that they're not part of it, then they'll join. But you can't actually put your hopes into some of these people because they'll always let you down when you find out what they
and
really
one geeky last thing. I know we have to move on to our last story. One geeky thing: Hampton Dellinger, who's the son of my constitutional law professor, the late Walter Dellinger, he threw in the white towel 2 weeks ago. He would have been the third case, and he would have lost. He saw the writing on the wall. He was the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which is the other part of the Merit Service Protection Board. He thought he couldn't win. I thought under Humphrey's executor, the case we talked about, he would win. But you know what? I give it up to Hampton. At least he wasn't on the losing end of this decision that we're talking about.
Well, and he bought enough time where he was able to issue a report to help the federal workers when he issued a report saying those terminations were unlawful. And he was able to see, he bought himself the 10 days to do that. He did his thing, which is, I think, why he asked for those 10 days. And then he, went into the sunset, if you will, and has no interest in being a part of this ridiculous Trump regime. Finally, though, on a positive note, this 7-2 ruling seemed like an obvious ruling. So, kind of clapping for it is probably, not deserved. Like if that's where the Overton window has shifted on Second Amendment issues. But Popok, why don't you briefly hit this 7-2 Supreme Court ruling?
Yeah, that's we had hoped this would happen. We're speaking of nostalgia for the Biden administration. This is a Biden era push to have home kits that you can make a DIY gun at home. Already sounds bad. They're either 3D part manufacturing or you just get the whole kit. And these kits either run the gamut from like a jigsaw puzzle where everything has to be put together and it takes you hours to do it. And there were reproduced photos in Gorsuch, who wrote the majority opinion, the 7-2 opinion by Gorsuch, or it's not a kit at all. The thing is exactly a gun. It's got a couple of plastic tabs you need to just cut. You shove the magazine in the bottom. And as one of the advertisers, one of the labels on the side of the box said that Gorsuch reproduced, just buy, build, and shoot. Right. And that's the point. The question was whether this type of kit was governed by the Gun Control Act of 1968. Remember when Congress used to get together with national tragedies and handle them a bipartisan way, like when RFK was killed and Martin Luther King Jr. were killed, and they came up with maybe we should get guns off the street. Remember that? So the Gun Control Act still exists. And the question was a little bit of an esoteric one, whether the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Bureau, whether the Bureau's interpretation of issuance of a regulation pursuant to the Gun Control Act of 1968 under Joe Biden, under the Biden administration, where it said that these kits need to who are being sold by gun manufacturers have to be registered with serial numbers, and people that get them have to get background checks, and because the explosion, no pun intended, of these kits, 30,000 ghost guns, that's what they call them, with no serial number, were used in crime in the last year, up from 1,000 5 years ago. So we got a problem. And all Gorsuch and the other 6 said is that these two things can live in harmony. The Gun Control Act does not mean that this regulation is facially invalid. Now, he left it open for depending upon the type of kit and but he didn't like the kits that he had seen because they looked a lot like guns out of a box. So now the ruling based 7-2 with Alito and Thomas. Of course, Thomas, who wrote the Braun decision, New York Rifle, about expanding the Second Amendment rights, making them personal rights for people and not allowing regulation of people having personal sidearms and other weaponry unless back in old-timey time they could find a historical antecedent or analog for it. He wrote that. So, of course, anything that looks like gun control, so there, as I said in a hot take, 2 people on the court are in favor of mass murder and mayhem used by guns that are unregistered, which law enforcement hates, by the way. And 7 thought that's not such a great idea. Let's find a way to shoehorn these DIY kits into the regulations. Again, they're not banned. You can continue. Sorry, I'm stuttering over it. You can continue to make your guns at home, but you got to get a background check and you got to get registered. It's not going to be an off the grid weapon because so many of them are ending up in the perpetration of violent crime.
Michael Popok, you said it all. I was thinking, do I even add anything to that? And all I add to that is, Michael, I'm really proud of it for you for starting your own law firm. I want to remind everybody where they can reach out to you if they or someone they know has a case. You handle personal injury cases, but really like the catastrophic injury cases. So wrongful death cases, cases where there are serious injuries. And if it's not a case you handle, you team up with the best lawyers in the country to try to get the best results possible for the clients. The consultation is absolutely free. So if people have a case or have a loved one or a friend who has a case, where do they tell them to reach out to?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's a website and a 1-800 number. The website is my name. It's the Popok, Popok, firm.com. And the 1-800 number is 1-877 Popok, Popok,
It's really great. I mean, you wanted to start your own firm, got thousands of calls already. So really proud of you there. Want to remind everybody about Michael Popok's YouTube channel, the Legal AF YouTube channel, on its way to 1 million subscribers. So check that out as well. Check out the Midas Touch Substack at MidasPlus.com, 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 and hit subscribe below as well. Help us get to 5 million subscribers here on the Midas Touch channel. We covered a lot. Very comprehensive episode on today's Legal AF. Share this network with friends, family members, coworkers. Share Legal AF with anybody you know. It helps really spread the word of mouth about the show, about what we're doing here, about our mission. I've been getting a lot of videos shared with me from all of these town halls that are taking place where Midas Touch has frequently been mentioned, and people are wearing their Midas Touch and Legal AF gear, which is super cool to see the impact it's having here in the United States and Canada and Europe, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Central America, Mexico, Africa as well. We see you all, Legal AFers. We're grateful for all of you, and in Asia as well. Grateful for all of you. Thanks everybody for watching Legal AF. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Popok. We appreciate you. Have a good day. Stay in the fight. Democracy is going to prevail. We're in this together. Shout out Midas Mighty. Shout out Legal AFers.